Assange's beliefs are the following. He is a leading proponent of an open society and of freedom of expression. He is anti-war, anti-surveillance and anti-imperialism. He is a champion of political transparency as a means of achieving democratic accountability and of the public's right to access information on issues of importance, issues such as political corruption, war crimes, torture, and the mistreatment of Guantanamo detainees. More specifically, Mr. Assange advocates the exposure of crimes against humanity and accountability for such crimes. For all of the above reasons, the appeal by the US should be rejected. For all of the above reasons, our government should step up, should ring Mr. Biden's administration and say, mates, we've got to resolve this political embarrassment. We've got to resolve the situation of Julian Assange. We must free Julian Assange because at the moment we are an embarrassment as Australians internationally. Thank you.
In Australia, it was announced the other day that there is going to be a royal commission into veteran suicides. And a figure I heard that it's in excess of 10 suicides for every battlefield casualty. This surely says something to us about the honour on the battlefield, that the veterans come home and they cannot live with themselves. These young men that we send off, some of them still teenagers, then they come back and they're told to return to normal civilian life. They're given very little support. The veterans are, in fact, victims of this situation. Karen is about to come up and read out a small speech that she's written that's very personal and I think speaks to this situation. Thank you, Karen.
This Sunday will be ANZAC Day. ANZAC Day is not a celebration of a victory or glorification of war. We remember the defence personnel and the lives lost or changed forever by war. As a multi-generational Australian, I have family who fought for Australia at war. On his birthday in January 1944, my father joined the RAAF as an 18-year-old, while World War II was in progress. He was a complex and troubled man. I don't know if this was due to his time in service, but I often wonder. I have letters written to my teenage grandmother by her young friend, fighting in Gallipoli, asking her to look after his girl. Julian Assange's mother wrote in a tweet that her granddad was a POW drowned at sea. Her father was in the intelligence corps. Her uncle Bert had a leg amputated on the battlefield with no anaesthetic. Her uncle Neville suffered third-degree aircraft petrol burns, and her son, Julian Assange, is being persecuted for his multi-award-winning journalism revealing US war crimes. Some of us here were present to hear the courageous whistleblower, former Army Major and lawyer David McBride, speak in Canberra last month at a rally for Julian Assange. In part, he said, "I grew up in the shadow of the Second World War, the greatest generation. I believe that." And he said, "I did not protest the Iraq War in 2003. I was one of those people that believed that if our government was doing something, it was probably close to the truth or okay. So it hit me harder than most to find out that the protesters were right and it was a totally fake, illegal, disgusting action carried out by our governments." He said, "Here is a guy who saw what was going on and he was disgusted, and they want to put me on trial. The whole thing is run as a spin operation to make themselves look good. They want to win the progressives over. They do a report. They are scared of the conservatives, so no one ever goes to trial except the truth teller." Julian believed that if wars can be started by lies, they can be stopped by truth. We commemorate those men and women who have fought, sacrificed, or been damaged by war. Good men and women want to see the wars stopped and peace waged around the world. This is why Julian Assange took the brave action to start up WikiLeaks, so that the truth of war crimes and corruption could be exposed and whistleblowers could be protected. He believed that once the truth was known by the public, they would stand up and demand accountability and action be taken. This is why the men and women here at Sydney Town Hall gatherings meet weekly. We want Julian Assange free. We want everyone to know of the good he did. We want people to understand the travesty of justice taking place in the UK at the behest of the United States. The judge at Julian's UK extradition trial ruled he would not be extradited to the United States. He has committed no crime in Australia. He has committed no crime in the UK, yet he is still being held in solitary confinement in a London prison. He was not given his winter clothing over the harsh UK winter. As he was unable to consult with his lawyers while in jail, he asked for a laptop to assist him to prepare for his trial. He was given a laptop with the keys glued down. The treatment of Julian is unjust, inhuman, degrading and cruel. This is vengeance. This is not justice. Free our Australian Walkley award-winning journalist Julian Assange.
Free Julian Assange.
Free Julian Assange.
Well said.
Folks, we're here to try and get the Australian government to pick up the phone to Boris Johnson and President Joe Biden and say we have an Australian citizen and we want the charges dropped. There's no credible charges whatsoever, and everybody in the international community that's in diplomacy or human rights or military or you name it, everybody knows this is an entirely fraudulent witch hunt. It is a witch hunt to try and silence people exposing the crimes of politicians that have killed millions and millions of people over the last 10 and 20 years. Now, I'm speaking for myself personally. I think it's ridiculous. Dropping bombs on human beings in this day and age, unless it's completely necessary, is ridiculous. They could be dropping school books. They could be dropping money. We could be making friends. We could be making money trading with each other. Why are we dropping bombs on people in Yemen? We need to wake up and say, we're not going to vote for politicians who start wrongful wars. Now, we're not here to say all wars are wrongful. Some wars can be very justifiable. But in the case of the war crimes exposed by Julian Assange, that's a very, very dubious question. It's an open question. And we want all politicians to be accountable to all the citizens for proper, sensible justice, reasonable justice, which is done without torture and is done with humanity and is sensible, which brings about peace and security for everybody on the face of the earth. Julian Assange has been pursued for nearly 11 years now for no good reason other than he's exposed the truth of public officials in the Western world. There's another aspect of this that's very important, everybody. It's very, very important to stand up for unfettered rights of free speech. Criticism is very, very important if we want to bring about justice. Everything should be subjected to criticism. And we're living in a world where they're trying to manufacture people feeling afraid to speak the truth, and that gets people harmed. That starts very, very wrongful circles of violence. So we're here to get some justice for Assange. We hope you'll join us. We're here every Friday afternoon. Please come and join us until they come to their senses and realise this is doing the politicians more harm than good, and we all know what's going on, and more of us are finding out what's going on, and they're not going to get re-elected. They can fake it all they like, but we know what's going on, and we're in an era where they can try to censor the internet, but they can no longer silence the truth.
Thank you to everyone attending our 74th Julian Assange Sydney Town Hall gathering. And thank you to all the people across the globe who are standing up for Julian Assange and for the rights of people everywhere to be truthfully informed about the lies and abuses of our governments. Thank you to all the people who realise that our voices count and that expressing ourselves helps us all to learn the truth and to act positively on that truth. As the founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange is an important figure for the well-being of society because he has made it possible for ordinary people to glimpse the inner workings of our system of government. His journalism has given us proof that our governments are built on a foundation of secrecy, lies, and surveillance. It is this system that makes the scapegoating and persecution of whistleblowers possible. It is not surprising, therefore, that this same system is responsible for the persecution of Julian Assange. Even though Julian is completely innocent, this system has made it possible for governments to conspire against him so he can be punished simply for journalism. It is almost 2 years since the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Professor Niels Melzer, first informed the world that Julian Assange has all the signs of having been subjected to prolonged psychological torture. Nearly 2 years later, nothing has been done to remedy this situation. Julian is still being held under torturous conditions in Her Majesty's prison, Belmarsh, in the United Kingdom, while our Australian government refuses to use its diplomatic privilege to do anything that might alleviate these torturous conditions. Julian's work of making it possible for all of us to know the truth about our governments demonstrates he is a kind, intelligent, and ethical human being who believes in doing what he can to help us all live in a more free and open society. If we want to live in a free and open society, understanding the true nature of our oppression is clearly an important first step. Even though Julian Assange is now being cruelly persecuted, he successfully performed this important first step on our behalf. It is now up to us to use our great ability of speech to spread the word to each other. We must also be aware that smears and lies have been put out by the powerful as a strategy to hide their corrupt use of power. We must bravely stand up, spread the word, and speak up for Julian Assange, as he is worthy of hero status from all decent people. Julian Assange is a true hero in every sense of the word. But the orchestrated smear campaign has put doubts into the minds of many. Although all of the smears have been soundly debunked, many people harbour some of these doubts about Julian's character. If you have any doubts about Julian, please consult the work by the great independent Australian journalist Caitlin Johnston. Simply Google the words "debunking all the Assange smears" and you will be able to read Caitlin's expert debunking of every one of the grotesque smears that have been fabricated over the last 10 years or so. The collective persecution of Julian Assange, involving the apparently democratic governments of the US, UK, Ecuador and Sweden, along with the complicity of the Australian government, shows us we shouldn't underestimate the depth of the corruption. This corruption is clearly not isolated to one or two bad apples. The corruption is systemic, and it will not be solved by individual politicians. Politicians have come and gone, but Julian's situation has steadily become more dire. Our corrupt system manages to launder itself through a process of substituting one bad politician with another. We must not fall for the illusion of just one or two bad apples. We must realise that the problem of governments concealing their wrongdoings from the public needs to be addressed by public action. We must play the ball rather than the player. We need to focus on our right to see evidence, know the truth, and our ability to unite. More repressive laws and more militarised policing will just make things worse. We need greater transparency of governments and corporations, and we must make it our business to make sure there are ways for us to be more informed. All corruption depends on our collective ignorance. Julian Assange is at the forefront of the fight for our right to know the truth. If we want to defeat corruption, we must first free Julian Assange. Thank you to all the people who are speaking up about Julian Assange and helping the general population to be more truthfully informed. And thank you to all those who are listening. Free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. Only one decision.
No extradition.
There is only one decision.
No extradition.
Only one decision.
No extradition.
Inmate
Our mate.
Julian Assange. Our mate.
Julian Assange.
Inmate
Our mate.
Julian Assange.
Inmate. Our mate.
Julian Assange. Free, free.
Julian Assange.
Free, free. Free, free.
Julian Assange.
Thank you.
I wanted to read a quote from Professor Nils Melzer, the United Nations Rapporteur on Torture. He recently spoke to a symposium of international parliamentarians about the situation of Assange. That symposium of international parliamentarians was made up of parliamentarians from all over Europe, and some Australians, I understand, also participated. It is loud and clear around the world that what is being done to Julian Assange is a travesty of justice. They've picked the individual and they've gone against the individual to make him an example to all other journalists, to keep them quiet, to keep them silent. We will not go down silent. We will actually continue to bring awareness about Julian Assange's situation in the UK and to say that it is wrong to persecute an individual for his greatness, for the fact that he has given us an immensely valuable tool to learn about corruption and about war crimes. This is what Mr. Professor Nils Melzer says about Julian Assange. Julian Assange is not and has never been an enemy of the American people. WikiLeaks fights secrecy and corruption throughout the world, and therefore acts in the public interest both of the American people and of humanity as a whole. We agree with Professor Niels Melzer on this issue, and also on this side of the world we have former Premier of New South Wales, Bob Carr, and former Foreign Minister of Australia, and he says Julian Assange's case boils down to the fact that Assange exposed war crimes in Iraq. If America gets away with plucking him out of the UK to die in prison, then all our freedoms are compromised. All our freedoms are compromised. We must get Julian Assange released from Belmarsh. We must stop all prosecutions against journalists. We must protect freedom of speech. We must protect freedom of expression. We must stop the silencing of our journalists. Thank you both, Professor Niels Melzer. Thank you, Mr. Bob Carr.
On the 3rd of May at 9:30 at the ACT Supreme Court, there's going to be a rally in support of David McBride. So if you can get down to Canberra, do so. Support David.
We are